I'm excited for this conversation. Thank you all for joining us. So we're going to be talking about this idea of metamorphosis and how the consumers are really building their own metamorphosis and looking at it through the lens of, as Joetta put it, 3 flavors. Moments they plan for, and that's, I think, that's something that we're all very familiar with as consumers ourselves. This idea of planning and being intentional and really thinking about those more personal moments in life. The moments we co-create, which is drawing on the power of community, the opportunities that emerge for brands like all of ours to support the consumers in meeting their objectives. And then those moments that surprise and delight, those moments that we can't plan for, that the consumers might not plan for, but we can really meet them where they are. So just to kick things off, Joetta, can you give us a little bit more background and flavor for what this conversation is all about?
Absolutely. So I'm going to share along the way during our conversation things we have learned from consumers. So, as we talk about how do we meet consumers where they are, the first step is really understanding where are they. And a lot of what I'm going to share today comes from a couple of different sources that I want to explain just so you know where the information is coming from. So a couple of different things. The first thing is this Decipher, which is Dotdash Meredith intent targeting tool. And the reason that, and I'll show you, talk through some of the connections, but what this tool allows us to do is, we have brands from InStyle to Birdie to Investopedia to travel and leisure to food and wine to all recipes to people. We have all kinds of content across all kinds of areas of life. And as people sitting in the audience, I'm sure you can recognize moments in your life when you need to go to each of those kinds of category experts for guidance or help or inspiration. And what Decipher allows us to do, which makes my job really fun, is to see those content consumption connections and how they tell us more about what a consumer is up to. And I'm going to give an unrelated example, and then we'll go into some examples here. But basically, if someone's reading about family travel on Trip Savvy or Travel and Leisure, what they read next may have nothing to do with family travel, right? You may read about planning family travel, and then your next thing is oh, my daughter fell and lost a tooth. What are we going to do?
Story.
Happened. This happened to Sally this week.
Yesterday.
And you're going to go to Very Well Health to be what do I need to be worried about? What do I need to do? Those 2 moments may have nothing to do with each other. But because of the scale we have, my team can look at everybody reading about family travel. What do they have in common in terms of what they read about in different topical areas? And it builds such a cool, fun, often hilarious picture of moments of need. And so for family travel, people reading about family travel on our sites are very likely, if anyone's ever done family travel, you will understand this, are very likely to be reading about on LifeWire, our tech site, tablets and the Nintendo Switch. Portable entertainment devices. Why on earth would you also be reading about those? To keep the kids quiet so that you can enjoy the travel. So Decipher is that tool, and it allows us to see those content connections. And then also, of course, it's an intent targeting tool, which means you can activate and reach people in that moment of need by running campaigns on those content areas. But today we're really talking about it from the insights point of view and what it teaches us about humans. So that's one source. The others I will not say so many words about, I promise. The others are we talked to consumers. We surveyed them. We surveyed them in February about how they were thinking about spring and how they were thinking about their goals for 2024 and how they've been impacted by the journey we've all been on since 2020 and how that's informing what they care about today. And then lastly, we are talking about, sorry, I'm doing this weird thing. And lastly, not just the connections, but also the seasonality of topics and the increases, the uptick in oh, wow, we're seeing people really lean into this topic now. That tells us something about where consumers' heads are. And for me, as a person who's obsessed with humans and the stories about them, knowing where their heads are is so critical to being able to speak to them in a way that matters to them. And since that's what we're all about doing together, that's just a really critical signal. So I'm going to dive in
Sure.
Sorry, I'm a talker. I'm going to dive in just really quickly to some insights and then toss it over to you guys about how you think about the consumers. The first thing is we asked people in our survey about how the pandemic had impacted them. And you can see here on this slide that there are some pretty significant. 9 out of 10 of the top things are about a focus on yourself, on a focus on your mental health and your physical health. And it is that is not a pattern that we usually see. Usually there's a bit around like adventure or status or all of these kinds of things. And this was just really striking to us. And then we asked, okay, so given that background, like you've been impacted, like how are you thinking about your goals in the pandemic? And you can see here, oh, sorry, I misspoke. This is the 9 out of 10. 9 out of 10 people. 9 out of 10 of these top goals are really around that reconnecting and really around that taking care of yourself. And it is a time to recalibrate. If we think about the previous slide, which I should say a little bit more of around like COVID really impacted us. There's a story around like, oh, well, last year was back to normal, everything's great. What we're seeing from consumers and their content consumption and the answers in surveys is we did go back to normal, and now this year we're like, wait a minute. Why did we go back to normal? Didn't I learn anything? And so now that's what this metamorphosis really is what did I learn? And how am I reevaluating and not just jumping right back into normal? And there are a couple of things that like 85% of people we surveyed are feeling good about their 2024 goals. These aren't happening because they have to. These are happening because people are actively reprioritizing and wanting to take the lessons from COVID and bring them forward into how we live life today and create a new normal versus just jump right back into things. And then the last thing I'm going to say, and then I'll hand it over to you guys on how you're thinking about it, is what is incredibly striking is we asked, what are the goals that you're deprioritizing? And look at these goals. These are the top goals that people said, I'm actively deprioritizing. These are a lot of a heavier focus on that outward professional success and growth in my career and things that are really about that image. And instead, people are saying, no, I need to take care of myself and I need to reconnect with friends and family and I need to get back to that stuff that makes me human. And I figured we could talk a little bit about how you guys think about that and how it struck you at Assembly.
Well, I think, Joetta, when we saw that stat, we kind of took a step back and we're like, oh, wow. We saw ourselves in that too. This whole idea that we're all in on self-care, and we're thinking about it from sort of the inner side of how we feel about ourselves. I love that it was very optimistic. I can't tell you already how many conversations I've had here at South by Southwest. We're like, well, we need to take care of ourselves. We got an IV drip. We're trying to take care of our feet when Kristen's walking home and like the swollen feet. Sorry, Kristen, didn't mean that for you in particular. But one of the things that we're talking to brands about is when you go all in on self-care, remember that humans are vulnerable. We're very, very much optimistic and confident, but life is messy. We talk a lot in brands about, oh, I'm authentic. I love authentic. Well, how about empathetic? How about a little bit more defiance of perfection? So what? Kristen's feet were swollen. I got you. I'm here for you. It's about being that ally, which kind of overlaps into we talked about going all in on community. It will never change. Friends, family, girlfriends, boyfriends, partners, they're there for support. But we're also seeing this outer ring happen where brands and media, they're there for guidance. We're seeing more and more interactions happening in search and social. Help me understand. Give me the tools. Give me content. Make it accessible. Make it inclusive. Because this is happening to everyone, everywhere. And again, through that empathetic tone. And then I think the last one, look, life is unexpected. Your kid is going to maybe fall down and tumble. But what can we do as brands and marketers to help be proactive, help them see the fact through the fiction, and help them decode when things and curveballs get thrown your way, because it's going to happen. But as a brand, what we can do to help them sort of take a moment to pause and have some sanity through the chaos.
One thing I love that we saw with a story that we did at InStyle was we sent a photographer to the Beyonce concert and Taylor Swift to see what people wore and the dressing experience. And I think that's such a good taste of what you're talking about, because this idea of sharing experiences in real life and, having a moment that you are in the preparation stages for. We saw the search volume of silver and sequins go up, and it was so funny. Our audience development team surfaced the word tinsel, and it was August, and they said, oh, people must be looking already for Christmas decorations. And I said, no, it's Beyonce. They're looking for tinsel for Beyonce. But this idea that people are searching, they're planning, and they want to live this together. They're sharing outfit ideas, and on social it just exploded. So it's such a nice return to that we're really seeing the users get excited about.
And it's about feeling good about yourself
100%.
and being unapologetically you. Who doesn't love tinsel, right?
Tinsel in August. Love.
And so we kind of took a look at like some of the signals that we were talking about in terms of content consumption. And today I'm going to dive in just a tiny bit into beauty, and then we'll talk about travel. But for beauty, the spring, look, no one is going to be surprised to know that as you come out of winter and head into spring, people are like, I'm going to take a fresh look at skincare. I'm going to take a fresh look at, my style. I'm going to, that's that moments that we can plan for, because we know that desire for renewal is going to come every spring, because finally I can see the blue sky again. I have hope that life is going to continue. And we look to that. But what's unique and interesting that we're seeing today is when we're talking to people about that, yes, we see that lean in on the skin foundations and skin texture and nourishing and all of those things. But what are people who are reading that also reading about? And I think that is incredibly revealing. People reading about this now they're not reading about the next fancy show-off moment or the next glamorous. They are reading about fundamentals like vitamins and supplements. People reading about skincare are saying actually, this is really, the skincare stuff is part of, I've got to take care of myself. I've got to nourish myself. And so how else do I do that from the inside as well? It's about taking care of me. And then the second one we see a lot of is people reading about the skincare. You know what they're reading about in travel? They are reading about spas, quiet escapes, the great outdoors. It is not the hottest beach club in Barcelona. It is, okay, I've got to refresh my skin. I've got to feed myself from the inside the right stuff. And being out there in the world has to be part of that. And it's those connections, which is through Decipher, that we can see that help paint the full picture. That of course spring is about skincare, but it's about a deeper need.
Yeah, I was going to say, one of the features up there is Amika, which is a client at Assembly, which has a whole variety of different hair products for all different hair types. And one of the things that we're talking about, they're coming out with a new product that's all about adding volume to your hair, because they're finding opulence, fluffy, big hair is coming back, which is great. I'm still a work in progress, obviously. It's not really working. But our conversation, right, was not about talking about the functional benefits of having that type of volume. It's the attitude that comes with it. When we had this mantra internally, big hair, don't care. And this idea that it's giving them the confidence of how they want to show up, that energy, that vibe. They're here at South by Southwest showing up their new spring look. And really focusing on that sort of a connection with consumers as they're planning for these moments of renewal.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing for InStyle is obviously with the seasonal change, the search volumes for best moisturizers, even SPFs is starting to hit for us. All of these, maybe some trends and some of these runway trends and things that are inspired from the runway, but the stories and the tips and our beauty directors kind of knowledge sharing that is a little bit more approachable, that I think has that idea of confidence boosting. So it's makeup that you can see your skin through. It's things that make you feel like your best self. That's what's really supplements, also things feeding your inside. Those are what's popping as well. And I think this is a moment of reflection. Of course, we have fake spring. I forget what you call it. The hint of spring coming in New York next week, where you think, oh my gosh, I can burn my winter jacket, and that's all a lie. Don't fall for it. But you have that hope. You get excited, and you think, okay, spring cleaning. Let's do a whole refresh for wardrobe and beauty, which is nice. But you mentioned travel, Joetta. What are we seeing now in this post-pandemic, that has an asterisk on it, post-pandemic-ish travel kind of mentality?
Well, that thing I was talking about around like, oh, we're back to normal, and then like, wait a minute, is that the normal I want? I had a chance to reset it. What we're seeing in travel is the two top motivators from consumers around travel right now are rest and relaxation and reconnecting with family and friends. That is fundamentally different than having all of the experiences or checking off my bucket list or, like an adrenaline rush of seeing something brand new. It's really, oh man, I need to rest more. And no one feels that at South by Southwest, I realize that. But I need to rest more. And also, it turns out I'm a social animal. And I didn't really think about that loss. And now I'm feeling it and looking to rebuild it. I mean, a personal story, like a month ago, for work, I was traveling to LA and I went to grad school at UC Irvine, so got together with all my grad school friends, and we played poker at a friend's house. We started very early because we're old now, and then we played very late because we really just wanted to keep playing. And I was literally telling my husband, like, I forgot how valuable friends are. Like, I kind of lost that during COVID because, let's face it, a Zoom drink is not the same thing as having a friend. And so it was this incredibly emotional, wonderful thing. And I have this written down. My friend texted us, the guy who hosted poker, who I've known forever, texts, "Thank you all for coming over. I felt joy for the first time in a while. Let's please do this again soon." And that that's my friend's language around it, but hearing in the survey these things, like, we have to have that in mind if we're going to be there for consumers. That's profound and meaningful. And we have to connect with that in order to be real sources of what you said, the guidance that they turn to us for.
Yeah, I think spring break is taking on new meaning. I definitely saw the traditional spring breakers at the airport. And I was like, oh, I remember when you're all going to the Dominican Republic. How nice. But I think what we're seeing when we're talking to clients, it's really spending a little bit more time talking about, are you going away for a 25th anniversary? Are you going away for a college reunion? And focusing more on group getaways again, and not focus so much on promotion. How about focus on the takeaways and the intrinsic feeling that you get? But the relaxation one is another one that's super interesting. We talk about being in that dream state, right? When you're thinking about travel. And if it's about mood and relaxation, how can we be in those places and spaces where you're in that state of mind, of Zen state? I came across an interesting stat recently. Streaming classical music is actually growing with millennials and Gen Z. Oh, okay, good. Yes. Like, oh, that's me. I know someone like that. Because it does. It kind of just puts you in that Zen mode. Nope. No, she doesn't agree over there. I don't know. But I will say that if you think about where you show up in those places and can think about how your brand can help elevate that mood. And I think the last point, which is also really important, wellness travel is not a luxury. Wellness travel is for everyone. And so we talk to brands and publishers about how it needs to be more accessible and inclusive, both from a price perspective and also like physically having lots of different opportunities, because wellness is not now like limited to the ultra high net worth. It's for everyone.
And I think the patterns we see in Decipher kind of underline that last point where, wellness travel could be that like very exclusive retreat somewhere with a schedule of yoga and juice cleanses and all of that, which is lovely if you can swing it, enjoy. But it's actually when we see people reading about rest and relaxation focused travel across Dotdash Meredith, the things they're most likely to also be reading about are in our like content about your mind and your mood and meditation and mindfulness. The wellness retreat isn't an escape from it all and indulge in this moment of self-care. It is one of the tools in the tool chest to try to take better care of myself as I move forward. And that to me is a really important shift.
I think that also speaks so much to, especially what we're seeing with Gen Z, with even things like boundaries, with caring about what brands stand for, with this idea of the thoughtfulness and intention that goes into the choices that they make. The same with travel and the trips and the way that they're spending their time. That they know that their time is valuable and they really are holding on to that. And I think, again, post asterisk pandemic, there is a lot more freedom and allowance to give people that kind of space to say, this is what I need. This is what I think we should, where we should be spending our time. And that idea of, again, appreciation, the impact of actually spending time being thoughtful about how you're using your energy in your own kind of space, which is important. Joetta, you mentioned also all the other things that we talked about, like in the survey with finance. Can you walk us through some of those as well?
Yeah, so I'm not going to go into all the findings, but I just, because we have all that content, we also got to see how it connects to mental health, to family, to money, to home, to fitness, to food and beverage choices. And to me, I will say, without going into like a long litany of stats, that this reset this desire for a metamorphosis, which is a fundamental change, not just a reset or a refresh, came through loud and clear across category. This is a core consumer moment of need that we are in, and this represents an opportunity for us to get it right if we bring that compassion and that empathy you've talked about.
And we had fun. When we were prepping for this, we were talking about the dopamine dressing, which I don't know how many of you are aware of that, but it is like, well, look at this right here.
That's the reason I'm wearing this jacket.
She is talking about this bomber jacket nonstop, and you know why? Because it makes her feel really good. And there's a lot of pop and color happening, right? That dopamine boost is real.
It's a really dumb thing to buy a jacket that this color orange if you plan on wearing it multiple times. But
it's not dumb. I promise. Do it. And I think that that's something that a lot of people assume. Again, after spending so much time at home, it's all about sweatpants. It's all about being cozy and comfy all the time and how we're transitioning to the office. Of course, that's totally true. I don't think she's in this room, but I saw a fabulous woman in the elevator wearing these cargo legging sweatpants that were amazing. But on the other side of that, there's the occasion dressing. There's that thrill you get in putting on the heel. Like, I still wear a heel. These don't count. These are basically flats. But I still wear a heel. I wear a tinsel covered jacket because it's like I was inside for 2 years doing nothing and wearing those same sweatpants. Of course, I want to wear something that can hide the fact that I'm wearing leggings to work on occasion. But I also want the idea of I'm getting dressed, I'm going out, and it makes me feel good. It doesn't really matter what my girlfriends or the people I work with think as much. But if I feel good, it changes my entire perspective on the day. The same with beauty. A colorful eyeliner, all these little moments that you take and you have like the thrill of doing something that feels special. We went so many months without that. And I think that is why so many of those moments are popping. So we talked a lot about the moments that we can plan for.
What about the ones we can't?
What about the ones that we can't?
Well, I have to tell you, one of the things that's interesting is we have a lot of retail and apparel clients. And I mentioned earlier, you have to plan for the unexpected. We live in an internet culture, and the most surprising things will sort of pop up in demand. And clients are coming to us trying to make sense of the chaos. So real life example, we have a footwear client, and we had noticed there was like a 300% increase in social on thigh-high boots. And come into the office, why the thigh-high boots? I thought we were done with this. What happened? Oh, Emily in Paris had premiered. Of course, they look so fabulous in those boots. And so the point was for us to constantly use real-time intelligence, social listening, understand in that moment there's an opportunity here to be on our front foot, proactive with our clients. And we said, okay, great. Do we have something in the product library that we can pull digitally to then serve ads? Or actually, if we don't, which is often the case, is there any UGC content that we can grab to then put that out there in the ecosystem to help guide consumers and show them, hey, you might have just seen this last night. Streaming is influencing style. Here are some options for you to consider. And it goes such a long way as a brand when you act like an ally in that way, and helps really turns fans into lifetime consumers.
And I know we're running, I know we're running a little low on time, but I want to mention like one of the things we're constantly doing. We have this channel called Movers and Shakers where we keep track of content that's like going crazy in a way that we wouldn't expect it to, because we're like, that tells us something has happened out in the world and brands are coming and users are coming to us to kind of make sense of it. And that is such a critical part of keeping your finger on the pulse, because knowing this foundational like rest and relaxation and self-care and stuff, that unfortunately, let's underline unfortunately, does not stop the outside world from happening. And we have to pay attention to how that, even though we couldn't have planned for it, is going to surface a shift in focus or a momentary need or a change. Just let that go.
The cards
a change
unexpected.
a change in what happens, because that is what it means to be here to help users, to help consumers, and to show up where they need you. And I just think that's such a critical thing to keep in mind as we move forward, is the world doesn't stop changing. And sometimes the world changes what consumers need against a backdrop of a compassionate, empathetic understanding of the consumer.
This to me is almost the most important piece, because for InStyle, it's so important for us to be part of the conversation, because if we're not part of it, we're already behind it. And so, of course, there's this moment of being reactive, and as Andrea was saying, seeing that something's popping, figuring out where it's coming from and being nimble and just saying, we know our readers are looking for it, let's serve it. But we're trying to get a step ahead, and we're watching Emily in Paris. We're having those conversations. You should see, I call it Slack law. If my editors are typing about it, or I know they're in their group chats texting about it, like that's the story. Stop telling it to me. Start writing it down, because other people are talking about this as well. And that to me is what's so important, being a step ahead of being reactive, because people want it and they want it right now. And that's, I think, kind of the key.
So up next, we've got a lot of other things, but do we have a few minutes for questions, you think? Yeah, are there any questions, comments, thoughts from anyone? Yeah, absolutely. So I would say almost like I'm a lot of the examples today are very female focused, but the topics we cover, like home and food and family and finances, the way my team thinks about it is I actually don't care who you are demographically. I care what moment of need you're in. And that's how we kind of use Decipher, is like, it doesn't matter if you're reading about, like, let's take a traditionally female of like reading about potty training on Very Well Family. And then what else you're reading about. Like there is if you were Huggies, I'm making this up. If you were Huggies, like, oh, I want to advertise like this new pull-up that's so much easier to use. And you're like, I want to go after women, this group. We say, no, we want to understand, we want to reach people who are actively reading about that challenge and then understand that broader content connection, because I don't care who you are, I care what you need. And I think that's the fundamental shift. Like I'm reluctant to, I have examples that would be more stereotypically male, like we can talk about finances and things, but I don't really want to reinforce. Actually, one of the things I want to be really cognizant of is that there are shared moments of need, and understanding the dynamics of that moment of need is so much more important than understanding its alignment with a particular demographic. And so like in finance, if people looking into sort of investing in annuities, for instance, are very likely to also be reading about the financial aspects of home ownership. Why is that? What does that tell me about what they need? It tells me that the moment of need isn't, I would like to get an annuity. The moment of need is, hey, I have some capital available. I want to put it somewhere a little safer. I'm willing to accept a lower rate of return for that security. Maybe I'm putting a down payment on some real estate. Maybe I should think about annuities as an investment tool because of the moment of need I'm in. And what really I think is really exciting about listening to consumers in this way is that it busts through a lot of demographic assumptions and lets you really lean into the need and the motivation that's underneath it. Happy to talk off of lots of other examples, but I think it doesn't matter who you are. It matters what you need and how we serve that to you, which means, for our content, enormous responsibility on us to write content that helps all kinds of people. If we do home decor that only comes from a particular point of view of rich white ladies who live in some specific suburb, are we actually serving people who are coming to us in a moment of need around how to think about making their home welcoming and comfortable? No, that's where our editors are really on the hook for representing all of that. And I don't know if you have thoughts on how you guys think about your content and making sure it really does tap into that.
Well, I think it's interesting. I mean, InStyle does primarily target women, but a third of my staff identify as men. And, when I talk about InStyle, we say it's where style meets culture. And it is really all of those, the Emily in Paris's and it might be the Michael Jordan documentary. And it's, my husband, the dream is actually my husband watching the Super Bowl, Googling Travis Kelce, going to Investopedia, seeing if it's worth, is Caleb in the room? Can you confirm, is it worth spending the money on Taylor Swift tickets? I think that's a good investment that he should do. I'm going in Miami. And then what should he buy me that I can wear? That's a trick question. He's not going to buy me anything. I am buying it myself. But it's definitely female focused in a lot of ways. But because we have so many listening tools, because we can see what our audience is reacting to, it is, I always say, giving the people what they want, meeting our audience where they are. And that is just building on what we know people are interested in. So it doesn't matter if you're a man, you're a woman, you're non-binary. We're just trying to give the best advice, the best information for that kind of style meets culture, beauty and style with impact, influence. So again, it doesn't matter who you are, but it's just trying to be authentic and true.
Well, I think you mentioned it a little bit. One of the things that we do at Assembly, we don't have Slack anymore, which drives me nuts. But we have something called Signals. And it's just a group of hand raisers. And so sometimes you just have to, thinking about your friend groups or wherever you work, hand raisers are talking about what are some real-time signals that we're seeing happening. And then just putting it out there in the ecosystem and then deciding, okay, what role does my brand play relative to that signal? Because sometimes it's not the right place to be. You have to think about what can I offer if I need to be an ally, if I need to give them guidance as a brand, what can I offer in that empathetic tone? So you have to take a moment to pause and then think, how do you want to put yourself out there and be ready for a two-way conversation? But it is about real-time intelligence. Doesn't have to have any snappy, cool tools. Just what are your folks talking about? And then really thinking for a moment, how do I then put myself out there?
I think that's exactly right. And I'm trying to think of an example, and this is so dated, but the ice bucket challenge, that's what comes to mind. And I actually went to Boston College, so I saw it so early, and that's where it started. If people remember this is, I don't know, 2017. And a lot of it is just about doing it, trying it out, having people on your team who are game to experiment and fail. But I think it's 100% Andrea, what you're saying about like, is my brand right for this moment? Or is this one we sit out? Because I strongly believe it's not right for everyone to say something about everything. Sometimes it's not right. And sometimes InStyle will say, this is cool, this is interesting. It's not something that we need to add to the conversation in because it's not right for us. But if it is right for us, we're going to come strong with an opinion and something that we're really excited to share because we're adding to the conversation and growing it. So for something like the Ice Bucket Challenge, like who on this team is going to go out there and do this thing and then write about it? But there are other instances where we just say, this isn't it. We don't have an opinion formed yet. Let's not do it. But I do think there has to be this idea of if you're talking about it, if people are excited, just go for it.
I also think, when I talk about Decipher, I talk a lot about the content connections. And I think the thing that, like, to remember is also, like, I was going to say something obvious. We're all full humans who have lots of different aspects of our lives. So that immediate impact, maybe it's not the right place for your brand. Maybe it's not the right moment to insert yourself. But that should be a flag to pay attention to what are the ripple effects of what just happened. And are there going to be impacts that you have an opportunity to step in and provide that guidance and provide that support and connect for the consumer? Because it might be something later that came from that, but knowing about that is going to help you understand where that effect is coming from.
I think that's a great point too. That's if you don't have something right away, to see what the next day story is or the next conversation, if it has life beyond. Because I gave that silly Super Bowl example, but normally InStyle is covering the Super Bowl because we want to see Usher do his thing. Amazing. I do want to see that. But this Super Bowl, Taylor Swift was making an appearance. And so, what are we coming to say about the Super Bowl beyond, we're not ESPN. We're not a site that people are going to come because they don't care what we have to say potentially about the Chiefs and the team that they played. But
49ers.
The 49ers. I know things. But I can tell you a whole lot about what Taylor Swift wore in those area pants because we were right on it. And we had a lot to say. And that story had legs and legs and legs and legs for us for days. We did a whole thing about what magical lipstick she's wearing that doesn't smudge. I'm not going to tell you here. I'll tell you later.
Wow, real secret stuff.
You can't, it wasn't confirmed, so I don't want to spread rumors. But we had our very expert beauty director and beauty editor share what their predictions are and what their favorite ones are and what they think it is. But I think that's another way that it's like, you're listening, it's a thing. What's that next step? And then you can just be ready for it.
Well, thank you guys so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.